All right, I'm going to call to order the Lake Mills City Council meeting for the 16th of March, 2021. For those that can rise, please rise. And I'm sorry. Let's do the roll call first. I'm sorry.
Ms. Quidno,
Here.
Mr. Foster,
Here.
Ms. Curler,
Here.
Mr. Waters.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, for those of you that can rise, please rise and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, that moves us on to the correction and or approval of the City Council minutes of March 2nd, 2021.
Can I remind everybody that when you're not speaking to turn your mic off?
Yep, you sure can.
Everybody black or red? We're all red.
We're good. Except for
All
me,
right.
I'm speaking.
All right. Thank you.
All right, correction and or approval of the City Council minutes of March 2nd, 2021. Do I have a motion of adoption as written?
I move that we adopt the minutes.
So, motion by Mr. Curler. Is there a second?
I second.
And we have a second. Thank you. Let's call the roll call vote, please.
Mr. Foster,
Aye.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Abstain.
Ms. Quidno.
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
Thank you. Item 5, correspondence. I guess I'll start. I only had one email really, and it was just some ongoing discussion with somebody in the community. That's it.
I do. I had several. I had an invitation from Jerry A. Strike of the Housing Authority to meet with him and Steve Pierce, which I did today. I got a tour of the Rock Lake Manor. I got a letter from the Joint Rock Lake Committee about carrying capacity. I think maybe we all received that. I got a couple of inquiries and recommendations about the restoration plan for the Cedars, which I referred to staff. And I got an email about short notice on a utility outage.
All right, thank you. Mr. Waters, do you have anything?
Nothing in addition to what Lisa just talked about, so all good.
All right, thank you, Ms. Quidno.
Same as Lisa. No.
All right, that moves us on to questions and public comment. The public is encouraged to address the council at this time regarding items on the agenda. Public comments may also be made at this time on items that are not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting has been called to order. The state's open meeting law discourages actions by the council on items not listed on the agenda. Please keep your comments limited to 3 minutes and state your name and address when starting your comments, and fill out the sign-in sheet provided if you're in the audience here. And for those attending online, please type your name and address in the chat feature. I don't think we see any. Is there anybody online that wishes to speak?
I don't believe there is, Mike.
All right. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak in public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, and we will move on to the city manager's report. Steve?
I didn't provide you with anything. I was busy this last week on vacation, so I'll try and have something ready for the next meeting.
All right, thank you. Well, you do have a couple of things ready at the end, so
Yeah, that took a little while to hammer out, but
yeah. Okay, item 8, acceptance of the minutes from the Public Works Board of January 12th, 2021, and the Joint Rock Lake Committee of February 2nd, 2021. Those will go on record as written. And if anybody's interested, those will be available out there for you to view, and they're out there available right now on the agenda. So if you have interest in that type of stuff with Public Works or the Joint Rock Lake Committee, please feel free to go out there and read that stuff. Item 9, council business. Presentation, discussion with applicants for vacant District 1 term ending April 2022 city council position. Excuse me. So the process is going to work exactly the same as we have before. We'll call you up according to the way your names are on the list, and we'll give you 5 or so minutes, whatever you feel like you need to take to give us some insight into you and why you'd like to be a member of the council. Most of you we've heard from before, and this is another chance to give us another view or more information that you may have thought of after you stepped down last time. Just remember that there's a lot of people that are applying for this position, and everybody has an equal chance at this, and we truly appreciate all the people applying for this, because this is it's an unheard of thing in the past probably 20 years, getting this many people interested in the city government. So I, for one, truly appreciate it. And if you aren't selected, by all means, keep trying, get on the ballot next time, join some committees, whatever you can do to keep yourself invigorated and help the community, because that's all this is for. I don't think anybody's doing this for notoriety. So, with that being said, we are going to start with Miss Terry Goodrich. The floor is yours. I'm not sure if you have to turn the mic on or not. You probably will have to if the green light isn't on it.
Got it. Hello, City Council members. Thank you for having us here again tonight. As the council said, I'm Terry Goodrich, and I am interested in this position because I'm just moving to another stage of my life where I feel being more involved in my community matters. It matters to my family, it matters to my community, and I wish to be as involved as I can. My son graduates from Lake Mills High School in like 30 some odd days, and so that's going to leave me with a whole new sense of, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? Plus, I'm involved in Lake Mills EMS, as I said the last time, and we've actually got a lot of volunteers where I find that I have more time to do things, and so I'm just reaching out to see what else I can do. For the last 25 years, have tried very hard and diligently to be a better human being, to be a better citizen of where I live. Most of that time has been in Lake Mills. I try very hard to give back to my community. I believe fervently that that is something that we all should do, is give back when we can for the times that we can't. And so I'm in a very unique position where I have time and I have abilities and I'm willing to work, and I'm always willing to do what others may not be willing to do. And whenever there's a position or a need, I'm always one of the first ones to step up and volunteer and do what I can, whether it be something simple or something big. I'm always willing of my time whenever it's available. I do hold a couple of degrees. I have an associate's degree in business. I have a bachelor's degree in business, and I am 4 classes shy of my criminal investigations master's degree. I've decided after I had my last child that I probably would not pursue my master's, just because 3 kids was enough and 2.5 degrees is enough. Well, then I went on and got certified as a firefighter. I got certified as a EMT. I'm kind of toying with the idea of being certified as a paramedic. There's just a lot more for me to do. And so I think being plugged into the Lake Mills community has done great things for myself, my confidence, my abilities. I know a lot of people. I think I interact well. I don't have conflicts with others for the most part. I live to be what I can to serve. And I think the Lake Mills City Board would be one of those opportunities for me and allow me more growth. And I believe in my community. I believe in the city of Lake Mills. I have watched Lake Mills go from barely 3,000 people to almost 10,000 people, and not a very long time. And our growth has been phenomenal. And I would like to continue to see our growth in healthy manners. And I'd like to be a part of that. And I'd like to be able to help shape some of the future of this city for my grandchildren and for their children and their grandchildren, because I see our community being there for that long, because we are a very, very strong community and we are a very close-knit community. And I just want to continue that. Thank you for your guys' time, ladies and gentlemen. I certainly do appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you so much. Okay. Next up is Dr. Richard Mason. Come on up, sir. The floor is yours.
Could he turn the mic on?
All right, did you hear that, or should I start again? All right. Well, here we go again. Good evening, council members. My name is Rick Mason. I live at 714 Hub Street in Lake Mills. I was born and raised in Lake Mills, and I always have been interested in city government. And I think the Boy Scouts had something to do with that. I trust you had the opportunity to read my rather abbreviated resume, and I tried to include items that might be of interest to you and the vacancy in general. What can I bring to the city council? What skills and abilities can I contribute? I have concluded that I have many experiences in a variety of commissions, councils, and boards. And I think that the experience is probably the most important. Some of those positions were elected, some appointed. And as pertaining to Lake Mills in particular, I've served on the Police and Fire Commission, and I've been elected to 4 terms on the Lake Mills Area School Board. My personal skill sets include long-range planning, personnel administration, and customer service. As I've said in my resume, I have no preconceived notions about the city council. If selected, I will serve with reliability, open-mindedness, and integrity. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Brings us to Mr. Jeff Johnson. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jeff Johnson. I live at 224 Louise Street in Lake Mills. I've lived here since 2001. I'm a retired United States Marine. I spent 21 years on active duty. Father of 2 children who graduated from high school here, and a stepfather to 2 children who also live in Lake Mills. I'm a graduate of Concordia University, a bachelor's degree in healthcare management, and I'm about to complete my master's degree in organizational leadership and administration. I'm not from Lake Mills. I grew up near Wisconsin Dells on a dairy farm. So I was really familiar with that area. When I came through this area, when I was looking for my first home, I fell in love with it. It was a small community. The people here were very welcoming to my 2 children. I raised them on my own. And I was very impressed with it. And that's why I decided to live here. And I've never regretted that decision. My background is as a transformational leader. And I've done this both in the Marine Corps and outside the Marine Corps. And by transformational, what I've been able to do is take failing organizations or failing concepts and help them to work. In the Marine Corps, I was an artilleryman. We went from kind of the old school way of doing things before computers, and when computers came in, we had a lot of pushback. And it was difficult to make that transition, but it was one of my first lessons that you have to keep an open mind and listen to everyone. Again, on the recruiting force, I was able to turn around a failing organization. And I've been working with wounded warriors since 2006 in a lot of capacities with the Marine Corps in Quantico, Virginia, and here in Wisconsin with the Department of Veterans Affairs. And also with the Department of Veterans Affairs, who's also going through a large transformation. So that's what I bring to the table. I bring a lot of skills, a lot of good listening skills, where I can hear both sides of the issues. I'm not wed to one idea or another. Everyone's got great ideas, but eventually we need to decide which way we want to go and move forward. If I'm appointed to this council, I look forward to being one of those voices, and one of those voices who's going to listen to everyone and everyone's ideas and decide on the best way for our small community to grow with a lot of thought and deliberately, but in ways that people can be proud of for years to come. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Patrick Cordis, are you here this evening? I'm not seeing him. Is he online?
No, he's
All right.
not.
We'll give him a couple more calls before we move on. Mr. Patrick Cordis. Third and last call for Mr. Patrick Cordis. Not hearing anything, we will move on to the next name. And that is Mr. Stephen Fields. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Steve Fields. I know you have a copy of our resume, but just briefly, my experiences, I bring about 35 years of experience in heavy industry and construction. That's my background. I'm a journeyman millwright mechanic. I served my apprentice in both degrees. Also have my business degree from Cardinal Stretch University. For volunteering in the city, I've been involved with the Lake Mills EMS for about 8 years now. Served on the Parks Board, and I also had the pleasure of serving on the council for about 3 years and had to step down when we moved from the south side of town to the north side of town. So I'm looking at rejoining the council. I definitely enjoyed my time there, being part of the community, helping to steer things forward. For the 3 years I was able to serve, and be very interested in getting back on council. Some of the other items that I could also bring to the council is going through all the FEMA classes and being involved with the emergency management, emergency plans for the city. Gone through all the classes, education for that, participate in that. So just really enjoyed my time and hope you'd consider me. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you, sir. That brings us to Mr. Anthony Munson, and he sent us a letter. He could not make it this evening, so I'll read his letter if everybody would like me to. Dear Lake Mills City Council, I'm sending this letter of introduction because we had some high turnover at work recently, and I'm unable to attend in person or online as a result. I am interested in serving the city for numerous reasons. My past has been in Lake Mills schools and Boy Scout Troop 148 Eagle Scout. My present is investing in Lake Mills and building a life here. My future is most likely staying here and, God willing, raising my own family here. I'm therefore very interested in the future of Lake Mills. These are the topics I think are important and deserve to be considered. Number one, keep Lake Mills a walkable community, both with smaller streets, mixed development, friendly business climate, and a well thought out comprehensive plan. Number two, keep Lake Mills Lake Mills. We have our own heritage and culture here. We shouldn't be a bedroom community. We should encourage industry and other business. We should encourage, with smart policy, living and working here. Number three, keep Lake Mills taxes low or at the current rate. With a measure twice cut once approach, the watermill overflow issue is a good example of where the community could have saved money had there been more upfront input and feedback. Sometimes that means outreach beyond just publishing in the paper. The bigger the expense or change, the more input is needed. There's nothing wrong with taking time to make sure the best ideas are heard and decided on. Number four, main priorities should not be raising taxes, improving transportation with fewer stop signs, more yield signs, more roundabouts, where possible. Infill development is a priority, perhaps offer tax increment financing on empty lots or vacant property. Sell unneeded city property if a good price is to be had, and put the money in a rainy day fund or expand the rainy day fund. Number five, most important thing is to listen to the people and get their feedback. No matter how great a plan is, with community buy-in, it is bound to do even better. Thank you for reading my introduction letter and initial thoughts regarding our fine city. I would appreciate your support. Anthony Munson. That brings us to Miss Miranda Heimstreet. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. Is the mic on? Can you hear me? Oh, perfect. Okay. Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to thank the council members for their time and consideration again, and I would like to tell you all a little bit about myself. My name is Miranda Heimstreet. I grew up here in Lake Mills, and I graduated from Lake Mills High School in 2010. After high school, I attended the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, where I majored in political science and minored in public administration. After graduating college, I attended the University of Wisconsin Law School, during which I worked for the Wisconsin Innocence Project. I interned for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and I was a member of the Pro Bono Society. After I graduated law school and was admitted to the Wisconsin State Bar, I worked for two small law firms in the area, including Thompson Legal in Jefferson and Geschko Law Offices here in Lake Mills. And in 2018, I was hired at the University of Wisconsin-Madison as a contracts negotiator, supporting UW's research enterprise in their Office of Research and Sponsored Programs. Essentially, what I do is I review and negotiate all forms of research-related agreements between the university and a diverse set of outside parties, including parties in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, both domestically and internationally. So the sponsors I work with can range from Sony to the Department of Health and Human Services to Wisconsin agencies and even municipalities occasionally. And my academic and legal background, as well as the roles and responsibilities in my current position at UW-Madison, have provided me with a skill set and breadth of experience that I believe would be greatly beneficial in serving the role as a city council member. Particularly, as a contract specialist, I work with a diverse group of stakeholders, including research sponsors, service customers, campus units, university researchers and scientists, and students who all have competing interests and priorities. But my job is to work with these stakeholders and understand their wants, needs, in order to reach common ground and compromise to establish a framework in which to conduct the university research, which is our common goal. At the end of the day, I realize that sometimes you aren't able to please all stakeholders. But ultimately, you need to do what you think is right, which I think is very important as a city council as member as well. You will never be able to please all stakeholders in the community. My background also provides me with some familiarity with different municipal legal concepts, like funding tools such as grants and TIF districts, as well as things like boards of review. And I have the knowledge and ability to research complex concepts that I'm not already familiar with. While my education and professional experience would serve me well as a council member, of equal or greater importance are the personal reasons I have for applying for this opportunity. I applied for this position because I love the city. I've lived here the majority of my life. My family has been here for generations, and I want to keep Lake Mills a thriving and vibrant small community, while also simultaneously looking towards the future. I would be honored to have the opportunity to play a small role in shaping what the future of our small city looks like. I moved back to Lake Mills after law school because it provided me with such a wonderful place to grow up, and I would love to serve the community to ensure that future generations will have a welcoming, civic-minded city where they can grow and create their own memories. Finally, I do not have any conflicts of interest that would impact my ability to serve as a city council member. Thank you again for your time and consideration in my application and remarks.
Thank you very much. And that brings us down to our very last person, Mr. Neil Waddell. Is that correct?
Wow, after hearing all the others, I'm the last guy, and I'm also known as the guy that didn't show up last time. So thank you for your encouragement in telling me to come back again. And after hearing all the others, I'm sort of wondering, like, what am I doing here? Certainly, you have a lot of qualified applicants, and I would be honored to be chosen. I'd also probably be surprised, but I've got 55 years of industrial experience. I'm retired, and I have high ethical standards. Most of, I think you can read my printed material that I gave, and you've reviewed that. I assume you've done that, but I'm concerned of the needs and rights for others, and willing to listen and understand opposing opinions. And I'm not easily offended. And I often have unique and viable solutions to problems, oftentimes with the resources that are already at hand. I'm innovative and able to solve problems with oftentimes minimal financial investment. And I kind of think, like, what are they going to think? I didn't show up last time. I was late, and I was thinking about, well, I should go back again. I don't know. I was reminded of a grad class that I was in, and it was at the end of the semester, and the professor was going over and reviewing what was going to be on the test, and this is going to be on, that's going to be on, you're going to have to know this, know that, know this, and it was on and on and on, very, very exhaustive. And I could see the kid next to me, and he was like melting, and I wasn't much better, but he was visibly melting. And thought, well, I don't know how I can handle all the information and data that is going to be required for this exam. but I'm going to go try. And I went to class, to take the exam, and the guy that was sitting next to me, he didn't show up. And the professor handed out a big, thick book for a test piece, test questions. And he's leaving the room, and he said, "Oh, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, you can use your class notes and your book." So that taught me a lesson. Don't give up till you're whipped, and show up again. So I guess from that lesson, maybe if you don't vote me or don't select me tonight, then I guess I can be back in April of 2022 and be on the ballot, and the field will probably be much smaller than, I don't know, but we'll see. All right. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, you hit that right in the head. It made me think of the old saying is you lose out on 100% of the chances you don't take. So you were exactly right. Also, we have a lot of very, very qualified folks here, and with a varied level of experience and strong backgrounds. So it's going to be very hard for us to turn anyone away, but unfortunately, only one can be picked out of or chosen out of this.
Mr. President, I'd like to move that we take a 5-minute recess so we can each reflect on all of the information that we've received to help us move ahead with this appointment.
We sure will. So we have a motion to take a 5-minute recess. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, we're in recess for 5 minutes. All right, folks, we are back in session at 7:36. And we move on to item B, appointment of District 1 Council Representative, term ending April 2022. So we'll do this the same exact way. I will open nominations and allow nominations to be made. If there's a nomination and a second, we will vote on that person, and if they pass, they will be appointed to the council. If not, the nominations will be reopened. Sure.
I'm anticipating it. Go for it.
Is it 2-2 a pass or
A 2-2 is a fail.
Is a fail?
Yep. Thank you. So yeah, a 2-2 is a fail. Have to have a majority. Okay, so with that being said, nominations for District 1 Council Representative are now open. Would anybody like to make a nomination? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a nomination and a second for Steve Fields. Could you please call the roll call vote?
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow?
No. No.
Mr. Foster?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passed 3-1.
All right. Congratulations, Mr. Fields. I believe you turned in all your stuff, so you'll have to come back and get it again. And they'll take care of all the paperwork with you, and we will see you at the very next council meeting, I believe is April 6th. For the rest of you, thank you so much. I know it was a hard decision. That's why they asked for a recess. And I wish we could put every single one of you on the council, but there's just not enough room, unfortunately. The last, the second District 2, we actually had a couple of those folks that applied actually came back and put their applications in for councils and boards, and they're going to be appointed to those councils and boards next session. So keep that in mind. It's a way to keep yourself involved. look for ad hoc councils, and if nothing else, watch for the elections and get yourself on the ballot. But thank you so much.
Can I echo what you were just saying about
Yep.
board positions? It is very important because there's a lot of decisions that are being made at that level, that by the time they get to the city council level, most of the critical decisions have been made, and it's simply a matter of us saying yay or nay. So I highly encourage anyone who is interested in having that kind of impact to go for the boards. And that we have plenty of openings and opportunities for you. So.
Mr. Foster, if I may add.
Certainly.
My 2 cents worth. I just, again, want to thank everyone who applied, and I find myself incredibly grateful to be living in community with all of you and with the talent and the motivation and the care for the community that all of you have. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, again. And I had something else I was going to say, but it skipped my mind. So I guess we'll move on. I'm sorry that those of you that weren't appointed. But once again, you live in Lake Mills. You won already.
Nice.
Okay. That moves us on to item C, board appointment. City Council Representative Greg Waters to the the Public Works Board, and Scott Thompson to the Board of Review. And Scott's one of those folks from the District 2 that applied for a board. So
Oh, yeah.
I would look for a motion of adoption to place Greg Waters on the Public Works Board and Scott Thompson on the Board of Review.
I move to appoint Greg Waters to the Public Works Board and Scott Thompson to the Board of Review.
Second.
All right, we have the motion and the second. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Waters?
Did you vote on this one?
You can vote on this one.
All right. Aye.
You gotta turn your mic on.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
All right, thank you. That moves us on to item D, discussion decision on appointment of Deputy Clerk Megan Dunneisen. Could I get you to read your motion, please? Misty, I believe this is yours.
City Council Motion 21-3-1-1, confirmation of city manager appointment of deputy clerk.
Okay, could I get a motion of adoption?
I move adoption of motion 21-3-1-1.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
All right. Who wants to give us some stuff on this? I'm assuming that this fits in with the budget, since it is a new person. And I'm assuming she's already working.
No, you're right that it's in the budget. It's a position filling. We had a vacancy that occurred in the accounting department, and Heather moved over to that position, and so we're now filling Heather's old position, which was executive secretary, deputy clerk. Don't have to have a council motion on the executive secretary. That would just be a position I could fill, but the deputy clerk is a statutory position and needs to have council approval. Misty and Dan and I did the interviews. We made a decision, a difficult decision, to select one final candidate, and that was Megan Dunneisen. She is currently the clerk in the town of Astelin. And Megan, you're online. You want to let us see you?
That's a lot of pressure when people don't know if they're going to be on video.
Hi.
Hi, Megan.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yep, nice to meet you too.
So the three of us recommend Megan for the position. Are there any questions?
Sounds like a winner. Does anybody have any?
It must have been overwhelming to receive 150 applications, I think it said in the memo, so that's quite impressive.
Yeah, there was a lot of very qualified individuals as well, though, so it's nice. It makes it definitely hard, but it's good to be able to pick from some of the best in the area.
We got the experience we were looking for, which is something that's kind of hard to do with a clerk position.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to get someone that can step in and start elections right away is always a godsend.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it helps too because Heather will still be here and able to assist as well in the transition. So I'm really excited and hope that'll work out well.
So when does Megan start?
Well, after we confirm.
She's actually supposed to be starting on Monday the 22nd. This was the final piece. There are certain things that had to be met, and the confirmation is the last one.
All right, that sounds good. Unless there's any other questions, I will ask for a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Quidnow?
Aye.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Well,
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
all right, that moves us on to item E, discussion decision on the 2021 street and sidewalk maintenance program. That is motion 20-3-2-2. Could I get you to read the title, please?
City Council Motion 20-3-2-2, approving 2021 street and sidewalk maintenance plan.
All right, I'd ask for a motion of adoption for motion 20-3-2-2. Thank you, Ms. Curler.
I didn't have my mic on, so I need to redo that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I move adoption of motion 20-3-2-2.
And a second.
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Waters. Okay, so Steve, I know all this stuff is part of our budget, and this is the motion to cover all of the stuff on the budget. Is there, what else do you have to give us on this?
Basically, we did the same thing last August and went through it and picked basically what we wanted to do with maintenance for the fiscal year 21. We do it again in March of this year just to make sure that the streets survive the winter. As we know, the streets tend to take a beating in the winter time, and sometimes the streets move up and down the PACER rating, which is what we use to determine which street maintenance is most important. We went over the PACER and the Whistler information at the Public Works Board and how we rated those. We actually drive up and down all the streets and confirm all the data that's required to be able to make a decision on which ones we recommend. The Public Works Board reviewed the documents that you have here and recommended that you approve this. Once you approve this, we will have it out for bid. And Dwayne is online, so he's the technical expert. If you have any questions on it, he's more than willing to answer.
So by all means, folks, ask questions. I've been through this and I know the stuff, but I know you all have questions.
Both Lisa and I sat through the Public Works this past week, so we got a pretty good feel for what Dwayne had to say and about how the maintenance program is put in place and everything. So it was very thoroughly explained there. So I have a good handle on it at this point.
Yeah, I want to echo that, and I want to thank you, Dwayne, for, in particular, one of the things I noted on one of the spreadsheets was the opinion of the cost range, which I think is really helpful for us when we're thinking about budgetary issues, that you sort of showed like what would be the high and what might be the low. And everything came in, even if you assume the high cost on everything, it's still within budget. So that gives me, sort of a feeling of confidence about the work. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. And exactly, we try to give that range. And as I explained at the Public Works Board, now that we move forward, if we move forward to the bidding, as staff then marks out locations for spot repairs before the chip seal or mill and overlay program, we always have that budget in mind. So we're trying to track that as the season goes on to try and stay in that budget. Always a challenge, but helps us make those decisions on those particular streets. So thanks. If there's anything else, if you do approve tonight, we will be going to add next week with a bid opening scheduled for April 8th. If that happens, then you will see the two contracts come forward once again, later in April for award.
Thanks, Dwayne. Yeah, and for the folks that are either listening on TV or I don't know how many people are online. Yeah, this is something that is not just put together willy-nilly. This is very well thought out, and there's a plan for years down the road of what road needs to be done when and where we're seeing the most damage. And it's very well thought out to make sure that we do this methodically and as fiscally responsible as possible. So if there's no other questions, I will call a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Foster?
Aye.
Ms. Curler?
Aye.
Mr. Waters?
Aye.
Ms. Quedna?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thanks again, Dwayne.
Thank you, everyone.
Item F, discussion decision on contract award, Lake Mills 1-21 tree planting Mulberry Street and East Lake Park Place. Could I get the title of that motion read, please?
City Council Motion 21-3-2-3, authorizing the city manager to award contract number LM 1-21 tree planting Mulberry Street and East Lake Park Place.
All right, I'll ask for a motion of adoption for motion 21-3-2-3.
Motion to approve motion 21-3-2-3.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Quedno. All right, Steve, I know you and I have talked about this, but I'll let you spread the word.
Yep, this is kind of a surprise. We came out of the South Main Street project where we had a large amount of money budgeted for street trees and additional trees to be added to property along the way if they had lost significant trees at their request. We ended up with about $35,000 left over in a fund that was set aside in this fiscal year. And so I asked Rob to put together a bid for finishing up Mulberry Street and East Lake Park Place. East Lake Park Place has been done now for about, 4 or 5 years, and we haven't been able to get any trees on it, and it looks pretty bare. So it was a good project, I thought, to combine. And Mulberry lost a few trees, and it would be good to go back and clean that up. So we designated that money for this project, and the bids came in great. And I'll let Dan and Dwayne talk about the bids. Dwayne set up the bid, so if you want to start, then let Dan finish up.
I guess quickly on the bids, this was basically the same type of bid we did last year for the Main Street trees, and so it was actually very similar. The trees are actually purchased by the Parks Department. This is only a contract for the installation of the 100 trees in this case. Dan, I'll pass it off to you unless there's other questions about the specifics of the project. It's generally just the planting of the tree.
South Main Street, it also allows them to purchase the 100 trees. They'll use those funds to purchase. So part of the contract is for planting it. Part of the money will be used by the Parks Department to purchase the trees. The difference between the South Main Street project and this one is that the South Main Street trees were selected primarily to fit into a tree lawn that was 4 feet wide. So you don't pick a big oak or a big maple to put into those types of tree lawns. You need something that can survive in a very small area. This year's one, if you look East Lake Park Place, some of the right-of-way there, or some of the tree lawn there is 25 feet wide. So the selection of trees will be much more diverse than it was for South Main Street. Same with Mulberry. So, Dan, you're up.
I have a question? I think is maybe for Dwayne or Steve. I'm wondering which department is responsible for overseeing this contract?
It basically runs. Rob does some of it. Dwayne will do some of it. Betsy and I will do most of it. So it's kind of a mix of when Rob will submit the invoice, Dwayne will have to go out and verify, and then I will sit down and make sure that it hits the right categories for what we expected, and Dan will work with me to make sure that everything was according to the contract, and then Betsy will make the final payment.
And I think you're asking who's going to manage them afterwards, and that's part of the Parks Department with our arborists.
Well, I was mostly wondering who is responsible for overseeing the installation of the 100 trees. So who supervises this contract, I guess is what I wanted to try to understand.
This one will be supervised by Dwayne. We'll probably also use Brendan. You probably don't know, but Rob has turned in his documents to retire, and so we'll probably use Brendan as the arborist to make sure that we've hit everything. Dwayne will make sure that all the numbers and the dollars match up, and then Betsy and I finalize it, and we'll probably have Dan make some final adjustments on it, depending on how the contract turns out.
So I feel like there's a bit of
I can't hear any discussion.
Neither can I.
The council member closest to Dan could turn on their mic.
Okay, I'm going to skip the whole elephant in the room part of this. Rob Getz is retiring. He is the Parks Director, a Parks Department Director. He also happens to own a private business, Getz's Nursery. He did bid on this project, and he did have the low bid. My estimate was about $1,500 that he came in under the other bid the numbers respectively were about $10,000 and about $11,500 on the two respective bids. I wrote a memo on this that was made available to all of you. It's a public document. I cited the appropriate Wisconsin statutes with regard to a city employee or official engaging in a private contract on behalf of business that they own. And this is allowable. The contract itself is under the threshold amount that state statute would require more scrutiny on, which is $15,000 in the course of a calendar year. As Rob is retiring, we don't anticipate, and besides that, I don't think we'll have a second tree contract or something else that he would necessarily be interested in this year. But we don't anticipate him going above that threshold. I also cited the ordinance's appropriate ethics considerations under the Lake Mills Ethics Code, and I explain why, in my opinion, this is in fact allowable. I do recognize that there is a conflict of interest here. We took certain steps internally once we found that Rob had intended to provide a bid on this project to both protect the process, to protect Rob as the director, to protect Steve and myself and the city as a whole from undue scrutiny. Everything has been done with a complete set of transparency. Rob engaged in the process as a closed bidder as anyone else would have. Steve is controlling the project and electing to run this project specifically through the council, even though it doesn't meet the $25,000 threshold that would require us to run the bid process through you. So we're just trying to be extra careful here and above board to make sure that this isn't an issue. Rob also had presented this to the former city attorney in years past with regard to private service contracts from his nursery, and had provided me with a confidential opinion that the former city attorney provided to him that was exactly in line with what I found in this circumstance. If you have questions for me, I'm certainly willing to entertain them. Where I come down on this is that it's allowable under the state statutes. This is 100% your call, though. You do have discretion to award the bid, to decline to award the bid, or come up with other circumstances that you think would be fitting here.
Can I ask the timing in which Rob is going to be retired? Is he going to be retired when the installation occurs?
Right now, Rob has identified his retirement date. It's in June. I can't remember if it's June 1st or when exactly in June it is. But that's kind of a misnomer because he has accrued vacation and accrued time that he's going to basically utilize to so that the city doesn't have to provide him a payout on that. So he'll be working in a part-time capacity in an effort with the transition of directors. When we go through that process, Rob will be available to kind of mentor the incoming director after we go through the hiring process, and he will be available for, let's say, 2 days a week for the foreseeable future until that firm retirement date. So he's going to be working as the director in a part-time capacity up until the new director is in place and ready to go. He views that person, I think he may have been online, I actually don't see him, but he views that as very, very beneficial because he will have the ability to provide oversight basically in both projects. He's a long-term employee here in the city of Lake Mills. There's never really been, any issue or any reason to not trust him that I'm aware of, and it appears that the plan is workable here. So
I certainly don't want you to think that I don't trust Rob, because I do. I just want to make sure that it doesn't come across to the public who doesn't know the ins and outs that we're not being a favoritism issue or anything like that. So in looking at what could potentially be considered favoritism, I wanted to ensure that when he is going to be doing the installation, that perhaps it would be wise to maybe not be in the position of director, but then again, that's up to the rest of the board and not just to me.
I believe that's what Mrs. Curler's question was regarding, who is going to have ultimate oversight on the project. And that has been placed into the overall boss who oversees and has responsibility for everything. That's the city manager. So, yeah, I absolutely respect your view on that. We have an outgoing long-term employee that's retiring that has won a bid. So.
Another question I would have, Dan, you mentioned that Rob had gotten an opinion from the former city attorney. So does that mean that Getz's Nursery has had prior contracts with?
Yes, not for the service so much for products. In years past, and it's a good long while past, I believe in the early 2010s, if I remember correctly, I'd have to look at the date on the document, that they sold some quantity of trees to Lake Mills. It was always under that same statutory threshold. It was disclosed, it was examined, it was deemed prudent, it was a fair market price. All of the boxes were checked on it. So yes, it has been a number of years though since that has occurred.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any chance that Rob had played any part in the approval process?
With regard to selecting the bid?
In regards to selecting the bid?
No chance. My understanding, I didn't scrutinize this, my understanding is that he provided a closed bid to the clerk within 1 day of the bid document being released. That was maintained and held by her the entire time. And then the bids were opened publicly and I was at the opening.
Okay, thank you.
If I may add for Ms. Curler, the contract is 100 trees, generally planting this spring. If tree availability or planting weather is an issue, the contract does have an opening to move that to the fall. So any trees in that 100 that aren't planted in the spring can move to the fall, which at that point, Rob would be fully retired according to Dan's dates earlier.
We went way above and beyond what we historically have done to award this type of contract. And that was to make sure that we kept everything above board and as ethical and clean as possible. So if you want to go through the timeline and review the process, I mean, we made sure that Rob was separate from all of it. Dwayne basically wrote the bid documents. Misty and Dan did the openings. Dwayne did the review. Dan wrote the memos and reviewed the outcomes and made the recommendations and provided the legal documents. And we sent it to council for full transparency review so that everybody knows what's going on and that Rob knows that everybody knows what's going on. So.
All right, Steve. I, for one, thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Dan, for explaining.
Yeah, I want to thank you as well. And I think that, you know, the extra steps of being extra transparency and even going beyond what the ordinance requires are really important. It seems to me from reading Dan's memo that really, how do I say this? I mean, we don't really have a basis for turning down the low bid. There's nothing in ordinance that or state statute that presents a conflict from what you've described to us, Dan. I think picking up from my colleagues, and I certainly have, separate from Rob, who I trust his work, I'm concerned about the appearance of conflict, the appearance of bias, not wanting the city to ever do something that would put an employee in the position of not being able to oversee their boss, or just kind of those kinds of situations that can come up. And I am curious for future discussion if there are ways that if other cities have faced these kinds of issues, particularly when you have a department head
who is bidding, that they're in a position of supervisory, authority, and, is that something that maybe other cities have dealt with or felt that maybe that's not a good thing? Maybe that there would be an ordinance limitation or, I don't know, I'm kind of just thinking out loud here, but I appreciate all the steps that the staff have done, and it sounds like you have a lot of safeguards in place to oversee this project in a way that avoids those conflicts, but it still is a little bit troublesome to me.
Okay, is there anything else? All right, then we will call the roll call vote on motion 21-3-2-3.
Ms. Curler,
Aye.
Mr. Waters,
Aye.
Ms. Quidnow,
Aye.
Mr. Foster.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, moves us on to item G, discussion on a new industrial park. And I'm gonna pass it over to you, Steve.
I'm sure you all enjoyed reading my memo. It was such an entertaining document. But really what it comes down to is we've had industrial park land available for sale in the city for at least since 1990. And at this point in time, the city no longer has any industrial park land. We have, as staff and an economic development commission, shot around some ideas for where we could locate. We did have a plan in place at one point in time. Obviously, acquisition of real estate is going to be very difficult, and then the infrastructure that goes along with it, particularly when you're doing shovel ready, which is pretty much the standard for nowadays industrial parks. So I tried to lay out a bunch of information for you to think about and essentially start putting this on your radar as another item that's going to be important for the council to deal with. I know that growth and how growth is impacted in the city is an important issue to all of you, but the industrial park generally is something that everybody generally strongly supports, and I've historically had a lot of pressure to make sure that we were moving an industrial park. So this will give you a lot of information to base that on. Do you have any questions?
Go ahead. Any questions you have, folks?
So at this point, we don't have an area laid out that we'd be looking at or proposing?
As a council? No. Staff has got about 5 different ones. They all have their problems. And so it becomes a situation of having to sit down and really make it a council priority. We've discussed it a couple times at some strategic planning sessions, but it didn't make it to the top of the list. There were some other items, and there was still, real estate left in the industrial park. At this point in time, there's none left, and so it's pretty much really moved to one of the top items. But yeah, I would say that I have some really nice drawings if you want to look at them.
Okay. Are we looking to close any of our prior tips before we start to open up some more?
TID number 2 will be closed at the second meeting in April, Betsy?
No, I think we're taking it the first meeting in April.
Okay, so on the April 6th meeting, you will have the opportunity to close TID number 2. We actually could have done this last year, but we extended it for 1 year for the workforce housing stuff. So this will actually be the year that we close TID number 2.
Okay.
But if you want to see how many TIDs other cities have, I can give you that information. We're on the low end. Even Johnson Creek, I think, has more than we do.
So help me with this a little bit. I'm trying to understand the business park that we currently have. There's not enough landscape, or not landscape, but there's not enough land to be purchased for businesses to build upon. Is that what I'm hearing you say? You're muted.
We no longer own any land in the industrial park. There are some private entities that own a couple acres. I think that one owns 2.5 and one owns 3.5 and another one owns about 7. But they all, at one point in time, planned on building on those sites, and I think they still do. And then we have the site that we just recently sold to the dog daycare. So yeah, we're out.
So the street that it goes down and is at a dead end. Help me understand. That land beyond that cannot be purchased or made into an industrial park?
Oh, it's certainly, well, good, 2 separate questions. It can be purchased. It cannot be made into an industrial park unless you're willing to spend huge numbers of dollars on wetland trading.
Okay.
Because most of that land down there is at least 50, maybe as high as 70% wetland.
Yeah, we don't want to disturb that.
We have a threshold of wetland that we have to maintain.
Right. So is one of the areas potentially up in the west side of Lake Mills?
I would prefer to have that conversation at a different point in time.
Okay.
Because the second we start talking real estate, everything gets really expensive.
I hear you. I'm just trying to understand, we have an industrial park and then we're going to add another industrial park, and just trying to figure out how we can make it so that it's not just a huge industrial spot, but that we can make it seem I guess I can't come up with the words right now. Sorry, I'll come back to you.
A less imposing feature on the landscape? Yeah. The existing Lake Mills has some real unique features. First of all, the lake really restricts us. So we're going north, south, or east. West is very difficult with the township development and then the lake and the wetlands to the south and those types of things. So the existing industrial park wouldn't have been at the top of my list as prime areas for an industrial park. I think it got picked at the time because it was a lot of lowland, which ended up being a lot of wetlands, and really impacted our ability to develop the site efficiently. That is not unusual in Wisconsin, that you end up with industrial parks with a lot of wetlands in them. That tends to be the nature of the business. But you also want to have the types of facilities that drive industrial parks. So like access to the interstate or access to the railroad or access to the airport, high quality electric, high quality water, high quality sewer, all those types of features that are very important to making a business function well. There are some businesses that would, a lot of the utilities aren't going to be as important to them as having access to the interstate for their trucks for distribution of product that they might be bringing in from another area. They buy all the parts, bring it in, assemble it, and then ship it out. Then there are some that are manufacturing here. They need a lot of high quality electric, so your reliability has to be really high, because if you're knocking their computers and their electronic equipment off all the time, they lose lots of money. So you keep going down the list. food production in Wisconsin is a big issue. Um, a lot of the main industries in Wisconsin are food industries. Wastewater, huge issue for food production. And then your supply chains all have to be within easy access, and then your distribution from there. So it gets to be what works best, and how much money are you willing to pay? Because you could pick the best real estate, but then that's probably the highest cost, and then you have to get the water and the sewer and the electric and all the other things, and then you probably also have to add additional high quality roads, and so it just becomes this huge money roll. I visited a site this weekend where they said the guy bought the 1,700 acres for $20,000. Yeah, but that was in 1840 something. And so now you're looking at, that's probably a square foot for some of this real estate. So it's a really different market, and you have to think, okay, as a fiscally constrained municipality, where are you going to find your best bang for the buck?
You guys go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, I've just got a question about, are there any, and maybe you addressed this already with other owners, but are there any closed industrial sites that, where infill development could occur in the city?
I think we have.
Like Osprey, East, West?
No,
East Lake City?
no. Osprey's full.
Really?
Oh yeah, you guys are not keeping up with us here. Osprey is a water.
Mine's still there.
Osprey is a water business now. They what is it? I think it's called Rings or something like that.
He called me last summer.
Yes. We have the old down there at the corner of Grove Street and East Lake, Hamlin. But that's really a difficult site because all the parking lot got sold off separate from the building. And so if you don't have a parking lot, you really have a difficult time running a manufacturing business in today's environment. So how that building gets used is really going to be unusual.
Did the old parking lot get sold off? I thought I only saw a small portion of it.
About 50%.
Okay.
The old CPN building, they're now manufacturing hemp there. The old Planar building on the north side would be another one, but we really have that set up as commercial, and the owner of it really wants to sell it as commercial at a very high price. And he's able to sit on it because he has no need to move it. Same with some of the other real estate around the interstate. So it's like, no, we really don't have any significant existing industrial property to do infill on.
Okay, I have another question for you, Steve. When we're looking at industrial parks, how much land is required? I know it depends, but I want to know what he has in his mind of what does an industrial park, what are we looking at? Because when I've seen industrial parks like in, say, Sun Prairie, which is not us, it is very long and it has a lot of different businesses in it, which is great because it also consolidates all of the manufacturing industrial stuff in one spot. We don't have that kind of land, as you've already mentioned, in Lake Mills. So when we're talking about building houses and getting more people to live in Lake Mills, because we need to have industries see this as a potential place for their business, how are we balancing the growth of population with the need for industrial park?
Well, right now we're about, what, 90 homes short a year, and we're seeing 10% appreciation, so that you can get much more than you're asking for your house. So the existing businesses in the region, and we're going to call it the region, drive Lake Mills housing. The industrial park tends to give Lake Mills more of its own personality, culture, than some of the other ones. But you're gonna note that Lake Mills culture is really a Madison Waukesha spinoff of those types of government commercial jobs. The industrial park that we proposed was 225 acres. We've had another one that we proposed, trying to pull it back in and see if we could get something. That was 70 acres. But we went through a period of time where we were asked on multiple occasions if we had somewhere between 500 and 1,000 acres available for industrial development. So it's not unusual to see that, but most of the time we see 50 to 100 acres. A business park like we did, where they're 2 to 5 acres, is pretty rare anymore. For real industrial development, that's more of a business park where you're looking at more commercial type operations. And when I say commercial, it's like suburban drywall.
Rubber, yeah.
Yeah.
So I could go on for a while here, but is this something we should do a work session for?
Yep.
As is the next agenda item?
It is.
All right.
In fact, I've had several memos over the last several council meetings that they were all designed to go to some sort of study sessions where we work on strategic planning and try and pick out, what we want to see, how we want to see it, where it should go. So yeah, the next one is exactly the same. We have a plan in place. Are you ready, Mike? Can I go to that?
I'm ready. We can move on to.
Well, and maybe you could do it with both of these, but I just want to make sure that we as council members understand, like, what are the next steps? Is it a study session, or, exactly what is it that we would do next on this topic?
Yeah, and that's it. It's exactly it. A study session to look at what the staff has looked at, so we can have some thoughts and ideas, and then figure out how we want to make that work in our community, or maybe we don't want to make it work in our community. So, yeah, so a study session to find out what they have and what's available, and
set some
what direction they would need from us.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, so yeah, item H, discussion on Sandy Beach restaurant. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, this is pretty much the same thing. We have a plan in place that lays out a process over what would have been 7 years for finalizing the development in the Sandy Beach Park area. So it was the boat launch, the restaurant parking lot, the lakefront, and then the 2 trailer parks, splitting the trailer park into 2 different levels. The next phase is the restaurant. So this year we're going to finalize, probably by June 1st, the boat launch will be done. So I have budgeted.
Throw a couple things out there, Steve, real quick. So a couple things pop up when you're thinking about this. We have to really think if we're gonna do something like this and put a restaurant back in there, what type of restaurant it's gonna be, just knowing that we would exceed our threshold and that would most likely have to go to a public referendum. So I just want to put that out there before we go any further. Okay, Steve, it's all you.
Yeah, so the restaurant was the next phase. So when John Herring decided to pull out early, the council reviewed and decided to take down the existing restaurant, and we went with food trucks. When we had a council budget session last fall, I had 5 different opinions on what should be done with the restaurant. And that didn't get very far, other than the fact that it was in the budget for 2023. But in order for me to be able to build a restaurant in 2023, especially if I have to go to referendum, would be very difficult if I had started this year. So in order to be able to get it done in 23 without having done anything this year, will make it extremely difficult and very unlikely. There are some options that I discuss in the memo, is that we could let someone build on our property and give them like a 99-year lease. So that would be kind of a full private option. And then we can kind of run the continuum to a full full city-run restaurant. But somewhere in there, there are some real options for how to get this done without spending a lot of our own money, or if we want to control it fully, spending our own money. But if I need to know that in order to be able to start charting a course for us to start hitting some milestone dates. You know, like having a preliminary design done, finding out if it's going to be satisfactory to any restaurateurs, making sure that we then note what the opinion of probable cost is, and being able to then determine if we're going to referendum or not. And those types of deals have to be completed. And then we have to go through the final design process, get it out for bids, and then go through all the financing processes. So that takes quite a bit of time. I mean, Michael know the Sandy Beach boat launch took us 4.5 years. So it's not nothing here is a quick process. And even though we have laid out in a plan for what was going to be done over those 7 years, council changes. And every time the council changes, focuses change. And even when we had the same council for a long period of time, their priorities changed because other issues came up, and they were saying, excuse me, I'd rather do this than that.
Steve, can I ask you a question while you're breathing?
Yeah.
Okay. Noted that there was a public information hearing. Can you tell me a little bit more about when that was and what kind of feedback was given? Also, an idea of how many people actually attended.
Well, actually, we held, I think, 4. We held a preliminary one, which was required by the grant, which was a pretty basic one. And then we got some complaints that we weren't doing enough public participation. And so we held 2 more, primarily town residents that live along Sandy Beach Road, who felt their view was going to be impacted by the boat launch change, attended. So a lot of the comments related to that. Some of their comments were, you know, that it was going to be unsafe or it was going to do this or that, but most of all the planning and engineering that went into this and the review by the DNR and the Fish and Wildlife recognized that the boat launch was going to be safer moving it to where we're proposing. We took, I'm trying to remember, Mike, but I think we took like 6 or 7 of their requests and incorporated it into the boat launch proposal.
Yep, we sure did.
there was a lot of statements about that we didn't take enough public participation, but the public participation tended to lean really towards high-end stakeholders who weren't looking at the overall interest of the community when they gave their opinions. So it was, I think the council made some good decisions. We got $970,000 worth of grants, so almost the whole thing was paid for by grants. The only part that wasn't was the archaeological surveys, which I think a lot of people feel was a real benefit of this project, was all the information that was provided out of those.
Steve, my inclination would be that it might be slightly different stakeholders or and maybe more, but I would think the public will be equally interested in this restaurant conversation. So I hope as we move into a study session that we think very carefully about public involvement and making sure, because the last thing I would want to do is be going to a referendum on an idea where that's the first time people really have a meaningful chance to have input. I don't know what's the right answer right now. I really do want to hear from, people in the city.
Yeah, and that has to be our first part, knowing exactly what the folks in the community want and what they can support. Steve brought up the idea of having a private restaurateur in there, and that brings up all sorts of other issues. One being the fact that how did we get the original restaurant and park? It was sort of taken over by the city, just like we were required to take over control of the cemetery when the owners just basically quit claim. And that could end up being the same thing, and we could end up with a building that doesn't suit our needs and things like that. So there's a lot of things that we really have to take into account when we look at this. And one of those is, will the community support it, and what will they support? What do they want?
Well, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at with understanding what public involvement had been so far. Just to kind of identify, because as Steve pointed out, the council has changed and their priorities have changed, or their focus and their mindsets have changed, because we all have different backgrounds and different things to bring to the table. And that's true of our community. With it growing the way that it is, I feel that it's necessary to reestablish, now that that restaurant is out, and that the redevelopment of the area is being done, it might be worthwhile for us to consider having a public session or another opportunity for public to come and say what they think should be done, knowing full well that there are going to be some who are obviously going to be thinking about how it's affecting their environment. But overall, I would like to see more public input with how this is going to go, so that we don't experience, an onslaught of negativity because we've decided that one thing in our community has said, well, no, that's not what we want.
Yeah, and I can speak to that a little, because we did specifically break that stuff into phases. And while we had to put together a whole overarching plan to say, this is what we want to do in these different phases, and show pictures of, a potential restaurant there or new parking lots here. Those are all ideas. The only process that we were looking at truly was moving the boat launch at that specific time. So having input into the parking lot, input into the restaurant, and input into how we're going to manage the trailer park are still to come. And that's exactly what we're talking to start right now. To start that process, first thing will be a work session, so we can figure out ourselves who are our key stakeholders that we'd like to reach out to, and then how are we going to reach out to those folks, and how are we going to get the rest of the input back from folks that maybe we didn't deem were key in this process? How do we get that information back from them? And then we can start the planning process with potential pictures and things like that, and then have our public hearings like we have to.
My experience has been, and we were required by state law when we did the comprehensive plan to set out a public process, and we set out a very elaborate public process. We had at least 6 major public hearings. We had focus groups, we had charades, we had all kinds of additional documents. We were on TV and online for every meeting. We read every word in that plan online over a 2-year period. And when it came to time to approve it, people showed up and said, we were doing this in the dark. They had never heard anything about it. And so it's getting to the point where the public is going to be very serious about it and participate at a level that they feel like they've gotten somewhere. You're probably going to have to hire someone to come in and do it like the school districts do.
Yeah, and the school district did a really good job at that. So yeah, I think it's something we really have to think about and discuss, because obviously it's not cheap to do that, but I think it would serve everybody in this community's interest to be involved in that process. So some of that money being spent for that, I don't think is a horrible thing. So is there any other questions on this right now? Because this one's going to take the same route, and we're going to have a work session to figure out which direction we want to go, and then give direction to the staff on where we want them to start this process. And those will be scheduled depending on who the city council president is with the staff, to get those on the schedule for next whatever sessions. Anything else, Steve?
Nope.
Okay.
So I think we're going to be busy in late April, early May, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Getting up to speed and working on some of these priority issues.
Well, yeah, and then getting everybody situated in their, whatever their new role is for whatever board or commission and things like that. So, yeah, there'll be some busy days ahead for the council. All right, recommendation for any future agendas right now? Nothing that hasn't already been discussed? All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.